Well, Thursday was the last day of public schools here. I think most schools, even the private schools, are out now. So you've probably noticed, right? Traffic. You guys don't care. I care a lot. Yeah, thank you. Teacher in the back row. Teacher in the back row. Yes, second grade teacher. I love it. And, this is that time of year when you start thinking about, did you remember summer when you were a kid? Like, I don't know what your summer was like, but like when I was a kid, you like lived for summer, right? It was like magical. It's summer, right? And it was awesome. And my experience was I lived in this great neighborhood, and both my parents worked. So in the summer, my parents would get up, get dressed, go do whatever they did at work, and I would sleep in, right? I'm like, it's carefree. I got nothing to do. And my grandmother, this was the great part about my childhood, my grandmother just lived in the same neighborhood, like right down the street. And so I would get up whenever I wanted to get up, and I would get on my bike, and I would ride to my grandmother's house, and my grandmother would make me breakfast. Oh, isn't that great? And she was a great cook, and it was amazing. So I would go, and I would have breakfast, and my grandmother would make me this awesome breakfast, and then the rest of the day was my bike and my dog. It sounds like a country song. My bike and my dog and my friends in the neighborhood and basketball and video game. And it was just complete freedom. I don't know what your summers were like as a kid. It was just complete freedom. Okay, now I'm an adult and I have 3 young kids. And summer's here. It's not so much fun anymore. It's not carefree anymore. Now I have these 3 little people that live in my house, and now I have to figure out, what do we do with these people all day? How do we keep them busy? And how is it that at 7 a.m., before the day's really even started, they're already saying, Dad, we're bored. You're bored. What are you talking about? You get to stay home, right? But there's this marked difference, right? There's this marked difference as I think about my summers as a kid versus my summers now that I experience as an adult trying to keep these kids active, right? And really, there's a marked difference between my life as a kid and my life now as an adult. I mean, I think that's what 21 Pilots were trying to say in the song, right? What were the lyrics to that song? You'll see on the screen. It says, wish we could turn back time to the good old days when Mom would just sing us to sleep, right? Like the good old days, back when it was carefree and easy, and I just got on my bike and rode around the neighborhood, and I could do whatever I wanted to do, and it was just fun, and it was just really about ice cream and swimming and riding my bike and hanging out with friends. But now, we're what? We're stressed out, right? We're stressed out. Now we're adults. Now it's real life. And guess what? Now we have to pay bills. And rent comes due every week. And that car, it needs to go to the mechanic. And FPL, what are those guys trying to do, right? And you have to study, and you have to go to school. And you need your degree, right? And there's real responsibilities and real life. And it's what we've been trying to talk about in this message series called It Happens. We've been trying to talk about this simple idea that life happens. And we have these dreams, we have these pictures, right? There's this picture in your head of what you want your life to be or what you dream about your life being. And then there's real life. And life is hard and life is challenging, and there's these threats, there's these issues, there's these things that happen to all of us. They happen to all of us. We all experience them, and most of them, we don't see them coming. They catch us off guard, and they keep us from living the life that we want to live, living the life that we dreamed of living. And today I want to talk about something that every single person I've ever met experiences. Today, I want to talk about something that every single person I've ever had a conversation with experiences, at least at some level. And in fact, this even gets personal for me, because if I'm just being real and I'm just being honest, rarely a week goes by when I don't sit at some point during the week where I'm sitting at my desk, staring at my computer, and I'm just thinking about life, right? I'm just thinking about life, and I'm thinking about my family, and I'm thinking about my job, and I'm just thinking about life, and I'm looking at my to-do list, right? I'm looking at here all the things that I should accomplish or I need to accomplish, and I'm looking at that, and I'm thinking about all the people who are counting on me, who are depending on me, and I'm usually looking at my calendar going like, it's just not enough time. And there's the moment. Do you have this moment, right? When you're sitting there, and there's this moment, and sometimes it catches you off guard, and you're sitting there, and you're just like, I am completely overwhelmed. I mean, if I were in the swimming pool, the water would be coming up very quickly, and my head is getting like I am overwhelmed. To use the words of 21 Pilots, I'm stressed out. I'm just stressed out. Do you feel that? Do you feel that? Stress, anxiety, fear, panic attacks. I mean, life can easily, without even trying, life can just easily overwhelm you. Right? And you got school, many of you are in school, and you're pursuing a degree, and these projects and these papers and these tests, they just keep coming. And the first of the month happens every year, every month, and the first happens, and there are all these bills that are due, and you got to pay rent, and you got to go work, and sometimes you work hard, and you put in all these hours, and you bust it, and do you ever just kind of go, for what? Like, what am I working so hard? And parenting, if you've got kids, it's the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, trying to help guide these kids out of jail and just towards something in any direction. If you're married, marriage is hard, and you have to work at it, and there's friendships, and you got to keep your social media profile up to date, and there's just so much going on. It's just too much. It's just too much, and life is happening, and it's happening fast, and it's coming at you, and it's coming at you fast. In fact, I find it's just easy to be overwhelmed. It's just easy to be numb. Like, do you ever get to the point where sometimes just during the week with everything's coming at you, you just feel like you can't even move? Like, it's just like sometimes I feel like I just can't move because it's coming at me so fast, and it's coming at me from all of these different directions, and it all seems to be coming right at the same time, and you just kind of get paralyzed, like I can't even move. It's just too much. And I know I'm not alone because the statistics on anxiety and depression and panic attacks are outrageous. They're skyrocketing. In fact, I'm not that old, but when I was a kid, we just like you were either like normal or crazy, right? There weren't like categories, but societies, cultures, when something is prevalent in a culture, what do? They tend to come up with all of these different definitions or all of these different ways to describe it. And so now we have all of these social anxieties, we have phobias, OCDs, PTSDs, ADDs, there's all these things, and I just mentioned all, you know what all of those are, right? Because you have a PhD level in anxiety. And what happens is when you get overwhelmed, when you get overcome by stress and anxiety and fear, what happens is it keeps you from living your life. It keeps you from living your life and your dreams and your purpose. And stress and anxiety and fear and overwhelmness, all of this hinders you. It puts a cap, it puts a lid on your life. It makes you have this feeling of being stuck. You ever just feel stuck? Like, I'm just kind of stuck. I'm just kind of stuck in fear. I'm just kind of stuck here. Sometimes it even puts you in a tailspin where you feel like your life is just spinning out of control. I want us to look today for just a few minutes at a guy, and even if you're not a church person or a Bible person, this is a guy that you probably know some or at least aspects of his story, right? You probably know the highlights, and which, by the way, the whole idea of highlights is very dangerous, because what happens to most of us is we compare our normal life with someone's highlights, right? You look at you scroll their feed, and what is it? It's their highlights, and you comparing your normal life to their highlights, and it makes you feel really bad. And so that even happens with Bible characters, right? You think like, wow, look at this guy, right? And so what I want to do today is I just want to peel back the layers a little bit, and I want us to look at the real story. The real story, and this guy that I want us to look at the real story of, his name is Elijah. Again, if you're not even a church person, you've probably heard that name. He's an Old Testament prophet, a couple thousand years before Jesus, and here's basically the story. He comes onto the scene, and there's a really wicked, evil guy named Ahab who is the king, and all the people of the country has turned away from the God, the one and only true God, to follow many gods. And so there's this wicked king. They're following these other gods, and they come up with this idea of, let's just have a showdown to see who is the real God. We're going to have a showdown, and if your God's the real God, great. If the one and only true God is the real God, then great. So they have this showdown, and so they meet on this mount, which is called Mount Carmel, and the idea they have is whichever of the prophets, whichever can call down fire from heaven, then that's the true God. That's who we should follow, right? Many of you probably know this story, right? And so there's 450 prophets of this false god named Baal, and they go first. And so they build this altar, and they put this oxen on top. And the idea is whichever god can just send fire down from heaven, that's God. And so they start their prayers and their chants and their dances, right? 450, it's a lot of people. They're doing all this thing, and by noon, nothing's happened. And Elijah's like, well, maybe your God's sleeping, or maybe he's constipated, or in the bathroom or something, or I don't know, all right? He really says this stuff. And then they start like cutting themselves and doing all these weird things, which, by the way, when people say all religions are the same, they are not, right? And so they start doing all this stuff, right? And they did all of this stuff, right? And at the end of the day, nothing. Not a whisper, not a flick, nothing. So finally Elijah's like, all right, you guys are done, man. You are done. My turn. And so Elijah, he rebuilds his altar, and he puts the 12 stones around it. And it says that he had them come in, and they dug a trench, right? And they just dug this big trench, like a moat almost, around this altar. And then he says, hey, let's just make it even more fun. Let's just pour some water on it. And so they got these big buckets of water, and they dumped it on there, and they did that actually 3 times. And it says that it was just soaked. It was just coated with water. And then Elijah's standing there, and he prays a simple prayer. He says, all right, God, if you're the true God, if I'm really your servant, if I'm really doing what you said, then God, I just want you to send fire down from heaven. And the story goes that immediately, right as he prayed, like this fire just comes down from heaven. It consumes the altar, burns up all the water, and just completely, and anybody that was close by just gets consumed, like boom. What a moment. And I want to pick up the story in 1 Kings 19. This just happens. In 1 Kings 19, here's what happens. I'm going to show it to you on the screen. It says when Ahab, okay, that's the king, right? This is the evil. It says when he gets home, he goes to Jezebel and tells her everything that had happened. Now, by the way, Jezebel is the wife of Ahab, okay? And she's the queen, and she's really, really evil. In fact, you know how you know that she's evil? Have you ever met anybody named Jezebel? No one would name their daughter. I mean, she is really easy. If your name is Jezebel, I'm sorry, you should change it. But I've never met in my entire life. I've never met anybody named Jezebel, right? Right? And so he goes and tells her. And so you see verse 2, it says, Jezebel sends this message to Elijah. So she sends a messenger, and here's what she says. You see it at the end there. It says, may the gods strike me and even kill me if by this time tomorrow I have not killed you just as you have killed them. So she sends this messenger, and she threatens Elijah and says, hey, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill you. Look what happens. Verse 3. Elijah was afraid and fled for his life. Now, many of you have heard this story before, right? So you're like, well, yeah, that's what he does. But if you think about it, like if you were new to the Bible, you would probably like say, time out here a minute, Greg. Like, really? Why would he run? I mean, the dude just called down fire from heaven. I mean, he just called fire from, I mean, like, dude, I'm the fire caller. You want to bring your little threat to me? You just bring it. I'm going to just zap you right up, right? I mean, you would think, like, I'm just getting started. Wait till you see the next move here, Jezebel. Bring it. Right? I mean, that would make sense. He just called fire from heaven. But what happened? He instead was filled with fear, right? He was afraid. And he ran for his life. Have you ever thought that, man, if you just had a miracle, like God would just do a miracle, then I'd be good. Right? I'd just be set for the rest of my life. That would be good. That would be all that I need. I've talked to people before who says, you know, Greg, just the reason I struggle in faith is because I've just never had the big one. You know, Greg, if I could just get the big one, if I could just get the fire from heaven moment, then I would be set for the rest of my life. I mean, I would never struggle. I mean, any other hardship, anything that came in my life, I'd just go, fire. You know, like fire, right? Like it wouldn't matter how hard life get. It wouldn't matter whatever life threw at me. I would just be good. But what did Elijah do? He had the big one. What did he do? He ran. He ran the opposite. He did the opposite of what heroes do. He ran the opposite direction. Here's what I've noticed in my life and the life of those around me is success doesn't carry you very far, does it? success doesn't carry you very long. In fact, my experience has been that right on the heels of a victory, of a miracle, of a success, right on the heels of that comes very quickly fear and anxiety and stress, panic, and overwhelm. And this says something, I think, something very odd about the way that we are broken, that we as humans are broken. I mean, you see the brokenness here in Elijah? That right after this moment, he runs, he's afraid. Do you feel that brokenness inside of you? You can have success after success after success, and you still feel insignificant. I mean, you can have success after success after success after success, and you still experience fear. And you can experience wealth and success, and you can accumulate. And it's like the more you get or the more success you have or the more you accumulate, it's like the more that you have, the more afraid you are to lose what you have. And so maybe people look at you, right, from the outside, and they're like, look at that guy or look at her. They got it all together. I mean, man, if I could be like anybody, I would want to be like that. I mean, like on the outside, by all measures, you're successful. You've got it all together. But you know what? They can't see inside of you, right? They can't see the inside, deep inside of you, the turmoil, the struggle, and how you struggle with your values, how you struggle with your significance. And you know, right? And I know that all your success is just hiding your fear and your fear of failure. And it's just crazy how this happens. I don't even know that I can explain it, but like at the same time, right, you can feel successful and proud, and at the same exact moment you can feel fear and overwhelmed. It's like you can just be at the simultaneously in this moment, in this inner turmoil, this struggle that happens inside all of us. What it does is it keeps us from living the life that we want to live. It keeps us from living the life that we were called to live. Your purpose, your destiny, your meaning. So Elijah, he ran for his life. He ran for his life. Now, if you look closely, right, he ran for his life based on a threat. Like it wasn't even Jezebel, it was just some messenger. He ran for his life based on a threat. Have you ever noticed that it's usually not the big things that trip you up? I mean, we're prepared, right, for the big things in life. We're prepared for the big things, the big problems, the big challenges. It's the small things. It's the little insignificant challenges that really probably no one else sees that tend to trip us up. And so Elijah ran for his life. And what happens when you run for your life, you usually run away from your life. And so look what happens in verse 4. This is huge. It says, then he went, it's Elijah, then Elijah went on alone into the wilderness, traveling all day. And that's a key word, alone. He left everybody, he left all his friends, he left his servant. He ran in the opposite direction, and he did it alone. He isolated himself. Now, I've been a pastor now for a while, and I have seen this 1,000 times. It always baffles me. It always confuses me. It always drives me crazy. But I've seen this so many times. It happens. When life turns up the heat, when you're under pressure, when things are coming at you so fast and so furious, what happens is you tend to run. You isolate yourself. And what happens is, because of our brokenness inside of us, right, is that we tend to create on the outside whatever we are feeling on the inside. And so if we're feeling despair on the inside, we create an environment of despair. If we're feeling hopeless on the inside, we create an environment around us of hope. And you create in your external world what you're feeling in your internal world. And I see this all the time. People will be plugged into church and community, and life will get hard, and they just bolt. You don't see them, right? And you tend in these moments to cut off the people that love you the most. You tend to cut off hope and life. You tend to cut it off. It's the exact opposite of what you and I should do, but this is what happened, and Elijah did it. Like he ran the opposite direction, and he isolated himself in a moment of need. This is why the whole idea of church is so important. And I feel like I talk about this every week. It's so important. The idea of what Jesus started. He said, hey, life is too hard to do it by yourself. You need a community of people. It's why the Sunday gathering is so important. It's why neighborhood teams are so important. It's why the summer calendar stuff that we do, all this is because you need to do life with people. And when life is hard, your tendency, everything inside of you is going to say, do what Elijah did and run. Get alone by yourself in the desert. But what really should happen, the reason that God created church is, hey, you need a place of hope. You need to be around people that can pour life into you and hope into you and squash your despair. And so that's why it's so important. It's what we're doing is so important. We started this church with this idea that we just want to be a place of hope. Just want to be a place of hope. Look what he says. Continue the verse here. He sat down under this tree and he prayed that he might die. And this is what he said. He says, I have had enough, Lord. Take my life, for I am no better than my ancestors who have already died. He wanted to die. And can I just say just kind of a pastoral moment here to anyone here who's experiencing suicidal thoughts, that the thought of taking your life, I just want to speak to you for a minute from my heart and just say you're not alone. You're not alone. And that you matter. In fact, this entire message series that we've been in since Easter is this whole idea that you were created on purpose, for a purpose, with a purpose, and you have deep meaning and significance, and it's so much bigger than you. And I would just plead with you to get help, to just get help, that we're here to help you, that we're here, this church exists to help you. And so let us help us. Let us fight with you. Let us fight for you, because you were created to live a beautiful life. And Elijah, in this moment, when he's thinking about ending his life, he lost perspective. He lost perspective of who he was. He lost perspective of who God is. And it's just so, isn't that easy? I mean, it's like, oh, let's pick on Elijah. But I just find, I talk to so many of you, and I experience the same thing, right? You'll come on a Sunday morning like this, man, and we'll just have an encounter. Like you'll just have an encounter with God. And then by 4 o'clock this afternoon, it's just gone, right? Or by Monday, forget it, right? It's all gone. It's like 1 minute, right? 1 minute, you have this fresh encounter and you feel hope and life and like, wow, this is so real and rich. And just a few hours later, you're back in despair and depression and panic. It's like just snap and it's gone. And Elijah had this amazing moment. Fire comes down from heaven, and just a few moments later, he is ready to end his life. Look what happened, verse 6. Flip to the next one, Jay. It says that's Elijah, he laid down and he slept under this tree. And as he was sleeping, the angel touched him and said, hey, get up and eat. And Elijah looked around, and there beside his head was some bread baked on hot stones and a jar of water. And so he ate and he drank. You know, when you're really depressed, some of you have been there, right? When you're really depressed, what do? You sleep, right? You sleep, or you eat, or you can't sleep, and you can't eat. You do all of that at the same time, right? You sleep and eat and can't sleep and can't sleep. But what's interesting right here in this is you see that God never was away from Elijah. Even though he was running in the wrong direction, even though he was fleeing, even though he was isolating themselves, he was never alone. The angel representing the presence of God was there. And I love that what he does is he says, hey, eat. Like, hey, I'm going to take care of your physical needs. I want to restore you, Elijah. We're not talking spiritual. I just want to restore you physically. I just want to restore your health. Look what happens in verse 7. It says, the angel of the Lord came again, and it touched him. And he says, the angel says to him, get up and eat some more, for the journey ahead will be too much to you. This is huge. Get up and eat. The journey ahead. You see what he's saying here? I mean, this is what's beautiful about God. He says, Elijah, there's a journey ahead. I'm not done with you. Your story is not over. This is not the end. There's more. You were made for more. You were created with deeper meaning and significance and purpose. There is just more. And oh, by the way, there's a journey ahead. And then look what he says. It will be too much for you. It will be too much for you. Can I just say something to you and me? Your purpose your calling will always be too much for you. It will always be too big for you. If you're doing something that you can do, it's not big enough. Right? This entire series has been about this idea that you were called on a purpose, and this purpose is bigger and grander than you. And he's like, hey, there's more ahead, Elijah. I'm with you. Let's go together. And it's always going to be bigger than you. And I want to just look you in the eye right now and say that God is writing a great story in your life. And your story is not over. And God wants to do something in you and through you. And so don't give up on your story. Don't give up. Fight for it. Go after it. It's worth it. Because your purpose, it's so much deeper than you, and it's worth fighting for. And look what happens in verse 8. It says, so he got up and he ate and drank, and the food gave him enough strength to travel for 40 days and 40 nights to Mount Sinai, the mountain of God. When he was running from God, he could barely survive a day. But when he was running with God, he was able to go 40 days and 40 nights. And something happens when you're living on purpose, when you're living with intention, when you're pursuing God and pursuing the grander purpose. There's something happens. Even though it's still big, even still it's still too big, even though there's still hard times and overwhelm, there's something in us. There's some kind of strength that allows us to keep putting one foot in front of the other and continuing. And so Elijah found purpose. And he was able to go 40 days and 40 nights. And what's interesting to me here, too, is you don't see anywhere in here that God ever answered Elijah in any way. Right? He didn't say, like, okay, Elijah, you're struggling. That's good. Let me tell you. Right? He didn't. He just said, let's go. We're going on a journey. We're going on a journey. And so for 40 days and 40 nights, you don't see any immediate answers. But he says, let's just go. One foot in front of the other. Let's keep going together. And then I love the last part of this. And God says to him, what are you doing here, Elijah? How'd you get here? You ever feel like God says that to you? What are you doing? This is a rhetorical question, but it's a telling question. Like, why have you given up? Why have you given up? Why have you given up on your future? How did you get out here? Where are you today? It's kind of a heavy topic, right? We talk about stress and anxiety and panic and overwhelm. But I find it's easy for all of us throughout the week to lose sight of who you are and who God is and to become overwhelmed by life. Where are you today? I'll just say a few things to you, and then the team's going to come up here. First thing I would tell you is, hey, tell someone, talk to someone, get help. In fact, when we wrap up our gathering here in a few minutes, there'll be some people back here at Connect Point that would just love to pray with you. Maybe you just want someone to pray with you, pray over you. Just tell someone. Don't keep it bottled up inside. It's okay. We all feel overwhelmed. We all feel stressed. We all feel anxiety. Tell someone. Next thing I would say to you and to me is seek community. You know, we learn here from Elijah, and I've seen it again. I've seen this 100 times. We've learned instead of run away, don't run toward isolation and run toward people, run toward community. It's the whole idea of church, right? Church is not a building. Church is not an hour on Sunday. The real idea that Jesus created when he created church was this team of people, this group of people who locked arms together and did life together. And he says, hey, we rejoice with those who rejoice, and we weep with those who weep. You know, I think in this room, there's a lot of young married couples, right? Just couples who were just been married for just a few months. And I think, man, what the beauty as a young married couple of having people in this room who've been married for years and decades even, and how you can learn so much. Right? It's just one little example, like, hey, run toward people who can help you. Run toward people who will embrace you and say, yeah, it's hard sometimes. But we can do it together. We can do it together. We will fight with you. We will fight for you. The last thing I will say is the antidote to stress and anxiety and panic and overwhelm is peace. It's peace. You ever met someone when you just look at them and you know them, like you know their life, you know their family, you know their situation, and you know it's not easy, right? You know, like, well, it's not like their life is like a bed of roses and there's rainbows and lollipops everywhere. So that's not, but you look at them, and in the midst of just normal life, in the midst of all of this other stuff, bills and stress and traffic, and in the midst of all that, there's this inner deep peace. Have you ever met someone like that? Where just, they're at peace. He's at peace. She's at peace. See, I think ultimate peace is found in Jesus. And Jesus wants to lead you on a journey toward peace. He wants to give you peace. In fact, one of the names of Jesus is Prince of Peace, the author of peace. And he wants you to experience his peace. And I believe that ultimate peace is only found in a relationship with Jesus. And it doesn't come in an instant. It's not a flip a light switch. Jesus is saying, hey, I want to journey with you. I want to walk this path with you. I want to walk this life with you. I want to walk it arm in arm, hand in hand. I want to walk that. And my prayer for you today is if you do not have that ultimate peace, that sense of peace, that you would experience that peace today. In fact, I want to say a prayer over you right now, and I want to pray that you would find that ultimate peace. So maybe you're here this morning, and again, you look good on the outside, your hair's all done, your clothes look good, but you know there's this inner turmoil in your life. There's this spinning that's happening even now as we're sitting in this room. I believe that Jesus is standing here this morning with his arms stretched out toward you. As if he's standing here like extending a hand. It's like you're climbing a little hill, and the hill's a little steep, and you just need a little hand to get over the hill. And I believe the imagery I have in my head is that Jesus is at the top of the hill, and he's just extending that hand towards you. He said, grab my hand. Give me your life. Surrender your life to me. Let me lead you. Let me walk with you. And I can lead you into ultimate peace. And we can go on a journey together. And we can go to this place of purpose and meaning. And it's going to be too much for you, and it's too big for you. But that's what I want from you. And so I want to just invite you right now. If you're here in this room, and I just sense that there's a handful of us in this room right now who need to come to that place of saying, okay, God, I've been fighting too long. I've been trying too long. I've been going my own way, doing my own thing. I'm just at this place now where I'm exhausted. And I'm ready to reach a hand out right now. If that's you, I just want to ask you right now, just talk to God. Just tell him, like, God, I want to grab your hand. I want to give you my life. I want to walk with you. I want to turn from my own way and quit doing my own thing. And I want to go with you and find that ultimate peace and find meaning and purpose and significance far bigger and deeper than just myself. So I invite you right now just to talk to God about that.